Dear, dear students, you are again welcome in this lecture. Now we will deal with chemical, physical, and biological changes in submerged soils. So this is really very, very interesting topic in rice cultivation or rice production, where soil is kept flooded for whole period in continuous submergence method or continuous flooding, or part of the rice growth, except upland conditions. Under most of the situations, rice soil is flooded or ponded with water for 1 month, for 10 days, maybe 3 months, whatever time is there. In some cases, it can be more, it can be less, but definitely time comes when your rice fields are flooded with water. So some changes have been reported due to flooding in rice chemistry, rice physics, or soil physics. You can say physics of soil or physical properties of soil, chemical properties, and biological properties of soils are affected. So how they are affected, we are going to discuss in this, but you can see some references. This is the classical reference on chemistry of submerged soils by Poonam Peruma. So this was the most interesting review of the subject and first standard review with respect to rice soils. Other is by Kirk, the biogeochemistry of submerged soils, and some research, papers or review papers like by N.K. Fagaria et al., chemistry of lowland rice soils and nutrient availability. So this is in part also. A lot of things are affected by submergence. So it is these chemical, physical, and biological properties changes will lead to nutrient availability, changes in nutrient availability. So how this nutrient availability is affected on submergence. Now, one is fertility and organic matter in submerged soils, soil fertility advantages of submerged rice cropping system, nitrogen mineralization in lowland rice soils, the role of organic matter, quantity and quality, soil fertility in flooded and non-flooded irrigation systems. So a lot of research paper information is available. And besides this, we are taking some information from International Rice Research Institute. So these are the references for this subject. I can share, those who like these papers, I can share. Now, we will learn through this exercise or this lecture, the meaning of redox potential and what are the important electrochemical changes. Electrochemical changes like redox potential or pH and in submerged soils. Discuss the influence of submergence on biological and chemical properties like pH and nutrient availability of soils. What is the relationship? And explain the effect of puddling and submergence on physical properties of the soil. So these are the subjects that we are going to discuss. But before that, let us see some terminology like obligate aerobe. Obligate aerobe, this is for microbes or organisms that live in soil. So obligate aerobe means they require oxygen to grow. They cannot grow without oxygen. During respiration, they use oxygen to metabolize substances like sugars or fats to obtain energy. It yields more energy than fermentation or anaerobic respiration. So this should be known to you that in aerobic respiration, energy released is more compared to anaerobic respiration or fermentation. So the counterpart of obligate aerobe is obligate anaerobe. So microorganism or organism killed at normal atmospheric concentration of oxygen. So they are defined with respect to oxygen. They are killed at normal concentration of oxygen. Some can survive up to 8% oxygen, while many lose viability in environments more than 0.5% oxygen. Means most of them can die if oxygen concentration in the environment is just around say 0.5% or more than 0.5%. So they can tolerate up to 0.5%. And you can see the convert nutrients into energy through anaerobic respiration or fermentation. So here anaerobic respiration happens. Now, the third class is your facultative anaerobe, organism that makes ATP by aerobic respiration if oxygen is present, but is capable of switching to fermentation if oxygen is absent. So under both cases, they can work, they can produce their energy. If it is oxygen is available, then they will go for aerobic respiration. Otherwise, in the absence of oxygen, they can go for fermentation or anaerobic respiration. One more category is a microaerophile. Microaerophile. This information I have taken from Wikipedia. If you are interested and want to see more details, you can go to Wikipedia and you can find there. Microaerophile, microbes that require oxygen to survive, but requires environment containing lower levels of oxygen than that are present in the atmosphere. So less than 21% and typically 2 to 10%. Then there can be aerotolerant. Organisms do not require oxygen as they metabolize energy anaerobically. Unlike obligate anaerobes, however, they are not poisoned by oxygen. That is the difference. Now, Erenchyma is your spongy plant tissue composed largely of air spaces, enabling gas exchange to take place by diffusion in roots. So these erenchymatous tissues or cells are important in rice. They help in the diffusion of oxygen or transport of oxygen to the plant roots. Then flooded soils, submerged soils, or waterlogging. So most of the time with respect to soil, they used interchangeably. Normally they are used interchangeably. And then question comes, why there are different words, if their meaning is same. So there may be some very minor differences in these, but with respect to soils, they are almost same. Flooded soil, submerged soils, or waterlogged soils. So there could be very, very thin differences in these terms. So flooded soil is defined as a condition when soil is oversaturated with water, often due to natural occurrence or with intended purpose for agricultural reasons. Means it can occur naturally, this flooding can occur naturally, or when you irrigate your field, there may be some standing water in the field, that is flooded field. Perpetually flooded soils can be found in wetlands. Perpetually means perennial, regular. Regular flooded soils can be found in wetlands, swamps, and marshes. Some of you might have seen those are flooded soils, marshes. Temporary flooded soils can be an effect of season, weather, or agricultural practices. So there could be two cases of flooded soils. One is permanently flooded soils, and other can be temporarily flooded soils. Now, what is submerged soils? Soils that are saturated, almost same. In flooded, we said oversaturated. Here we are saying saturated, but purpose is in both the cases, they are saturated with water for a sufficiently long time in a year to give the soil the distinctive gley horizons resulting from oxidation reduction processes. So here in submerged soils, you will find a gley horizon develops because here they are submerged for relatively a longer time. So two horizons will develop, we'll see it later. Waterlogging, the saturation of soil with water. Soil may be regarded as waterlogged when it is nearly saturated with water much of time, such that its air phase is restricted and anaerobic conditions prevail. So there is hardly any difference in flooded soils, submerged soils, or waterlogged soils. In all the cases, your soil pores are filled. In all the cases, your standing water is there on the soil. So I don't see really much difference in flooded soils, submerged soils, or waterlogged soils. They are generally used as interchangeably. Now you see, but however, you can find some difference in submergence and waterlogging here. In submergence, you can see the picture where the plant is completely submerged. It is not partly submerged, it is completely submerged. So this is your submergence of the plant with respect to plant. And on the right side, it is waterlogging, where plant, some part of the plant is exposed to air. It is not fully submerged. Now you see some flooding or submergence, they are synonymous. Flooding can be classified into flash flooding and deep water flooding. So flash flooding means flooding for a very brief period, short period. And deep water flooding means for long period, in accordance with the duration of flooding and the water depth. So you can see the first picture here, it is unsaturated soil. In this, you will find some pore space are filled with blue color, that is groundwater, and some pores are not having any water. So this is your unsaturated soil. See picture in the middle, this is saturated soil. You see the particles are having some blue kind of colors, filled spaces. Spaces are having blue color, means it is full of water. The pore space are full of water, but this is saturated soil. Here, there is no standing water on the surface. But in the third case, all the pores are filled with water, soil pores, and also you got some standing water on the soil surface. So it is your flooded soil. So flooding is can be classified into flash flooding and deep water flooding in accordance with the duration of flooding and the water depth. Flash flooding lasts less than a few weeks and caused by heavy rain, but the depth is not very deep. Deep water flooding lasts several months and occurs during the rainy season, and the water depth reaches several meters. We already discussed about deep water rise and floating rise. Now we will start the submerged or flooded soils tomorrow. We'll continue in the practical class, and now we can end it here. So dear students, you are welcome in this class, and we continue chemical, physical, and biological changes in submerged soil. In the last lecture, we just started, I gave you introduction of this subject and references. These references are very, very important. And I have tried to share these references with you yesterday, and hope you will be able to download them soon. They are quite useful references. And we will learn in detail about what is redox potential, what is its significance, what are the values of redox potential, how it is related to potential energy, and the oxidizing environment in the rice field and reducing environment in the rice field or soils, and what are the electrochemical changes. So actually, normally in case of rice or paddy soils, these chemical changes are prefixed with electrochemical changes. Changes like pH, change in pH, change in redox potential, change in EC values. These kind of changes are related to electrochemical changes. So under these cases, case of rice, instead of chemical changes, people call it electrochemical changes. So three major kind of changes happen in soils under flooding or submergence: physical changes, biological changes, and chemical changes. And these chemical changes you can call electrochemical changes, including your pH, EC, and redox potential. And we'll see how this soil biology or biological changes happen upon submergence, and what is how the availability of different nutrients occur. What are the nutrients whose availability increases under submergence and whose availability decreases. It is not that all the nutrient availability will increase due to submergence, but there are certain nutrients like zinc and copper whose availability declines due to submergence or flooding. So we would like to see that part also. And in the end of this lecture, you will see puddling. Why will we go for puddling? What are the advantages of puddling? And what kind of physical changes physical changes happens in soil due to puddling and also due to submergence. So we discussed the terminology obligate, aerobe, anaerobe, facultative, anaerobe. You can go through it. You have PPT in your hand, or you will have it. And we have seen submergence and flooding. And now we come to the real topic, that is submerged or flooded soil. So it does not make much difference in submerged or flooded soil. Whenever soil is covered with water, that is called as flooded soils or submerged soil in general sense. So definitely in case of rice, particularly transplanted puddled rice, you got soil submergence. Soil is submerged with water, maybe for 2 months, maybe for 1 month, maybe in alternative cycles, etc. So what happens, these flooding or submergence creates some problem in the availability of oxygen. And this leads to changes in the availability of several nutrients. And also there is production of toxic substances in the soil. So therefore, overall, the properties of the flooded soils are different from the aerobic soil. What soil you are seeing today, what properties you are seeing today for a soil which is aerobic, if you flood it with water for some days, say 1 month, 2 months, continuously or alternatively, certain properties get changed. So what kind of properties get changed and what are the reasons and consequences of this we are going to discuss now. So after soil is submerged, there are certain changes, and you can see these changes in soil properties are largely affected by soil oxygen supply. It is means soil oxygen supply is the main driver for these changes. All kind of changes are practically influenced by lack of oxygen in the soil. And of course, there are changes in the soil biology, chemical properties and physical properties or characteristics of the soil. So oxygen supply is very, very important. And if you were to divide soil into its component parts, you would have, so I think you know the constitution of mineral soil. So a mineral component is there, organic matter is there, and pore space are there. So there are 3 important components in a soil: mineral component, organic matter, and pore space. In these pore space, sometimes you can have water, sometimes you can have air, and sometimes you can have both. So I think in a typical mineral soil, you know, ideal soil, 45% is mineral component, 5% is organic matter, and remaining 50% are occupied by pore space. And in an ideal condition, if out of 50%, 25% is by air and 25% occupied by water. So that is the best case for plant growth. But what happens upon flooding? The proportion of air-filled pores declines and water-filled pores increase. That creates the changes. So the relative proportion of these components change depending upon soil type and soil water content. So if you increase one, the other decreases normally. If you increase the water content in soil, so pore space occupied by air will decline. If you remove this water by percolation or by evaporation, by some other mechanism, then that space is occupied by the air. So they are in equilibrium, you can say they are in equilibrium. So the proportion of air and water in the pore space changes with soil water content. Most crops grow best when the amount of air and water in the pore space is about equal, 50-50%. Or you can say out of total volume of soil, if 25% is occupied by water and 25 by air, that is the ideal situation. So you can see the same story in this picture: mineral component, organic matter, and pore space. 50% pore space and 25 air, 25 water. So when soil is submerged, what happens? Water quickly displaces air in the pore space. On submergence, on flooding, or when you put some irrigation water or rainfall, anyhow, when water reaches the soil, it enters the soil through infiltration, and then it occupies the pore spaces. So it displaces the air which was present in the pores. So water creates a barrier between the submerged soil and the atmosphere. If this standing water or flooded water continues to stand in the field, then water will create a barrier between the atmosphere and the soil. So it is not that free exchange of gases can happen from air to soil, because water will come in between atmosphere or air of the atmosphere and the soil. So remaining soil oxygen is used by biological organism. So now there will not be easy entry of oxygen into the soil. So what happens, whatever oxygen is present in the soil, that will be utilized by aerobic organism that require oxygen. So in the end, oxygen levels in the soil will deplete, they will go down. So the amount of oxygen in soil is insignificant a few hours after submergence. So what happens when your water enters the soil? The bubbles come out. If you have noticed, whenever you apply some water to the dry soil, you will see some bubbles are coming out. So those bubbles are actually oxygen. It is oxygen getting out through those bubbles. So slowly means slowly this oxygen level in the soil will be depleted and soil will be devoid of oxygen. So only a small amount of oxygen remains in submerged soil. So that is the problem. So can oxygen penetrate into submerged soils? Okay, some equilibrium has been established. Now, can oxygen enter the soil? Because plant has to grow. Any plant who is growing, whether it is aquatic plant or non-aquatic plant, it will need oxygen to survive. The roots at least require oxygen to function normally, because root are doing job of absorption of nutrients and absorption of water, and they also do their own growth. So they need energy, and from where they get energy? By respiration. And what kind of respiration roots do? Aerobic respiration means roots need oxygen to do their functions. So in that case, how roots get oxygen? That is the question in aquatic plants. So there are two major pathways by which roots can get oxygen. Number one, oxygen moves slowly through the water layer. Means there is diffusion of oxygen through the water layer. You got atmosphere, then water, then soil. So from atmosphere, oxygen will enter the water and it will diffuse into the soil. And it will be retained on the soil surface. It will not go deeper because its concentration is very small. It does not have much high concentration. So it cannot move to the deeper layers of the soil. That it confined to just to the topmost surface of the soil. Second option is that oxygen moves through the porous tissues of rice into the roots and creates an aerobic zone of soil surrounding the roots. So oxygen can reach the roots, or it can pass, or it can permeate from the roots. It can go out from the roots and aerate the area around the roots through the erenchymatous tissues, which are present in the rice plant. Porous tissues are there. So oxygen can be passed through the rice plant itself, getting absorbed through the leaves, through the stem, and they have erenchymatous cells that can pass this oxygen down to the roots. Now you can see how oxygen is moving through the water layer. So you can see it comes from atmosphere and it enters the water, and it is retained on the top of the soil up to say 10 millimeter or 15 millimeter, just 10-15 millimeters it can enter the soil. So oxygen from the atmosphere dissolve in the water. Dissolved oxygen move through the water layer by diffusion. As oxygen reaches the soil surface, it is used by soil compounds and microbes. So in the upper layer, some microbes are there which require oxygen. So those kind of microbes can use it, or it can be used in certain chemical reactions. Thus, a thin layer of soil, often about 1 millimeter thick, develops with the aerobic soil properties. So this is just very small, very thin layer, 1 millimeter thick. However, it can be up to 20 millimeter. In some cases, in some swamps or in soils which are permanently submerged, in those cases, you can get this layer thicker layer also developed. But under field condition, most of the situation, it is very, very thin layer. Now you can see oxidized and reduced layers in the flooded soil. On the top, you are seeing air in the atmosphere. Then you can see layer of the water. And below this, immediately below the layer of the water, you get one aerobic layer. Aerobic means oxidized soil layer. So this particular layer contains oxygen and aerobic organism also. So how oxygen moves through the porous tissue of aquatic plants, not just rice. These kind of tissues are there in the other aquatic plants also, because their roots also need oxygen. So what happens? Oxygen enters a rice plant through pores in the leaves and stem. You know, these leaves have pores, and through those pores, oxygen enter the leaves or plant parts, which are in the air, or you can say shoot part. It moves through the stem and roots of plant in a porous structure called parenchyma. You can see parenchyma tissues on the right side in the picture. So through these pores, parenchymatous pores, oxygen passes from leaves to the roots. So oxygen not used by plant may pass from roots into surrounding soil called rhizosphere. So whatever oxygen is required by the roots, it will be used by them, and some of them can be given off outside the roots. So that will aerate the rhizospheric part. So you can see this picture, oxygen entering the plant leaf, and you can see the oxygen passes through the leaves and reach the roots, and from roots, it aerates the parts. It aerates the rhizospheric area. And you can see it happens due to parenchymatous tissues. And you can also see aerobic layer, thin aerobic layer on the top, just below the water, and then rest is your anaerobic soil. So now your oxygen is not there. So organisms which require oxygen cannot survive in the reduced zone because oxygen is compulsory for them, particularly obligate aerobes. So aerated soil contains a tremendous diversity and quantity of organism and microbes. So any kind of air, any kind of soil, when it is aerated, when it is aerobic, when it contains good quantity of oxygen, the diversity and the quantity of microbes and all kind of organism is much, much higher than the anaerobic soils. This is known because number of aerobic organism is much, much higher than the anaerobic organism. It is by nature. It is given by nature. So these play an important role in the process of decomposition. Under aerobic conditions, the decomposition of organic matter is very fast because of availability of oxygen, and multiplication of organism is very fast under aerobic conditions. So now you will see some biological diversity in the next slides. So what happens that soil, I think you cannot see this picture perfectly. This is taken from Brady's book, and it is just a generalized diagram of the soil food web involved in the breakdown of plant tissue, the formation of humus, and the cycle of carbon and nutrients. So you can see all these organisms which live in soil. They are important for breakdown of plant tissue or decomposition of organic matter and formation of humus and formation of minerals, also nutrients, etc. So you can see a great deal of organisms are there. Some are micro, some are meso, some are macro, and their species and their numbers are so many. You can see it includes your earthworms, nematodes, bacteria, fungi, and mites, ticks, amoeba, paramecium, and up to birds, rats, termites. Variety of organisms are there in the soil. and most of them are happy when soils are aerobic. Their population in general decrease when soils become anaerobic. So this picture was just to show you that the variety of organisms which are there in the soil. So their number, their quantity, their activity decrease when we flood the soil. Sorry. So after submergence, soil oxygen is depleted. And because of this, biological transition happens in the soil. Means from anaerobic, now you will have more, from aerobic, now you will have more of anaerobic organisms. So aerobic organisms die or become dormant. They are replaced by microbes surviving without oxygen or anaerobic. So now population of anaerobic organism will increase. It may include your facultative anaerobes can live with or without oxygen. They have a choice, facultative anaerobes. Basically, they are aerobe, but they can behave as anaerobe. Obligate anaerobes only live where no oxygen is present. So there may be certain areas in the soil where you will have zero oxygen. So obligate anaerobes can also be there in the soil. But the predominant anaerobic organism in submerged soils are bacteria. Some aerobic organisms continue living in the aerobic zones of submerged soils. So in certain areas, wherever oxygen is there in the soil, maybe in some part of soil oxygen is there, so you can find some aerobic organism and oxidation can happen in that area. However, in other areas where oxygen is not there, reduction will happen in those areas, reduction of elements. Now, submergence and little bit of chemistry, chemical changes. Organisms get energy by respiration. Whether it is aerobic respiration or anaerobic respiration, energy is through respiration. But as we know that aerobic respiration results in higher energy than the anaerobic respiration. Respiration is the process where energy is created as carbon compounds are broken down. Respiration involves oxidation of carbon compounds and the reduction of oxygen in aerobic soils. Chemical compounds other than oxygen in anaerobic soil. So you can check. But before that, let us have some idea about redox potential. What is redox potential? For details, you can consult any chemistry book of 9th class or 10th class. NCERT books are freely available. So you can refresh your memories by knowing it again. What is redox potential? So it is oxidation and reduction. Oxidation and reduction, chemical reactions involving the exchange of electrons from one compound to another. I think you remember what happens in oxidation and reduction, and they happen together. So oxidation reduction always happen together. When one compound loses an electron, another compound gains it. So in oxidation happens when electrons are lost. So when some element is losing the electron, then it is oxidation, and reduction happens when electrons are gained. So you can see what happens under aerobic setting. When your soils are aerobic, there is no shortage of oxygen. So how oxidation and reduction happens under aerobic setting? So here oxygen is available. So 4 electrons plus oxygen plus 4 H hydrogen ions, and they make water. Equation above is an example of oxidation reduction reaction taking place in aerobic soil. Organic matter in soil gives up 4 electrons. You can see in the reaction 4 electrons. These 4 electrons are coming from organic matter, and these are received by the oxygen, O2, these 4 electrons. As a result, O2 is reduced to form water. So oxygen is reduced and water is formed. And hydrogen ions react with the reduced oxygen to form water. So this is oxidation reduction happening together under aerobic setting. Now, oxidation and reduction under anaerobic setting, where you do not have oxygen. But under anaerobic setting, you can have certain compounds which are oxidized, oxides. So here, suppose nitrate is there, and then 10 electrons, they will come from organic matter. 12H hydrogen ions are present in the soil, and this nitrate will be converted or reduced to nitrogen gas and water. So the above equation shows an oxidation reduction reaction in anaerobic soil. Electrons from organic matter in soil are accepted by nitrate, NO3, instead of oxygen. So here nitrate is the source of oxygen. In nitrogen in nitrate is reduced, the nitrogen compound becomes nitrogen gas. Hydrogen ion react with oxygen from nitrate to produce water. So you can see in both the setting, oxygen is producing water, whether it is aerobic setting or anaerobic setting, oxygen is producing water. That just a minute, wait for me. Yeah.
ये सर ऑडिट आया हुआ ना सीजी वाले।
हाँ, क्लास चल रही है, कल करूंगा इसका।
अच्छा ये लोग आप ये तो रख लो,
चलो मेरा
ये वाला हमारा दोनों
ठीक
ठीक है,
ठीक।
लॉग में प्रोवाइड कर दो।
Sorry. So what is redox potential? The tendency of compounds to accept or donate electrons, is reduction and oxidation potential. So redox potential is also called as reduction and oxidation potential, or oxidation and reduction potential. So different people call it by different names, or simply redox potential, or sometimes reduction potential. So they have the same meaning. You can call it redox potential. So redox potential denoted by capital E, small h. Redox potential EH is the measurement of the tendency of an environment to oxidize or reduce the substance. Whether a particular environment will oxidize it or will reduce it, that kind of potential is your redox potential. Aerobic soil has mostly oxidizing environment, so they have higher redox potential. Anaerobic soil has reducing environment, so they have lower redox potential, which may get minus values also. So the redox potential of a substance depends upon affinity of molecules for electrons, concentration of reductants and oxidants. So reductants and oxidants are also important, and they are referred as redox pair. So for details on this subject, you must consult a NCERT book, chemistry book, and there these kind of things are explained to you. What is reductant, what is oxidant? I'm just linking this knowledge to the subject of paddy soils. Reductants are electron donors. They are electron donors in wetland soils. So what are the examples of reductants in wetland soils? It includes organic matter and various organic compounds, reduced organic compounds such as ammonium, NH4, plus ferrous, manganese, sulfide, methane, and hydrogen. So these are examples of reductants in wetland soils. And oxidants, these are electron acceptors, include oxygen, nitrate, MnO2, FeOH, OH, sulfate, and bicarbonate, etc. So these are the examples of reductants and oxidants. Now, in this slide, you can see the voltmeter is the instrument that measures the redox potential. Here, I'm not teaching you how this voltmeter works and so on. Just I'm telling here that voltmeter is the instrument that is used to measure the redox potential of an environment, of the soil, denoted by EH, and the units of redox potential are MV, millivolts or volts. Now you can see certain electrochemical changes, that is your Redox potential is a electrochemical change and oxidation reduction potential found in rice soils ranging from well drained to submerged condition. So you can see if it is well aerated soil, potential, redox potential is plus 700 to plus 500. Moderately reduced, plus 400 to plus 200. Though the value are in plus, means overall the environment is oxygenated, but still it is moving towards the reduction, towards the anaerobic condition. Then reduced environment plus 100 to minus 100, and highly reduced minus 100 to minus 300 millivolts. So these are redox potential under different levels of oxygen in the soil. Now, redox potential in which the main oxidized components in submerged soils become unstable. So when they will become unstable or when they will change their form due to submergence of the soil. So from oxygen to H2O to water, it will be converted at redox potential 380 to plus 320. And when it is plus 280 to plus 220, then nitrate will convert to nitrogen, and manganese or manganic will convert to manganese. Mn4 will convert to Mn2 at this potential. Then next in the order is iron. Fe3 will be converted to Fe2, means Fe3 will be reduced to Fe2 at plus 180 to plus 150. Then sulfate will change to sulfide at minus 120 to minus 180. And carbon dioxide is the last one. It will be converted to methane at minus 2 to minus 280 millivolts. That is extremely reduced soils. In extremely reduced soils, this even the CO2 will be converted to CH4, methane. And CO2 will be the last one. And here oxygen is the first one. So there is chronological sequence of reduction, one by another, one by another. It is like this. So now people have done some research work. Can we have the optimum EH, optimum redox potential level for best yields of rice, best or better growth and yield of rice? So people have done some research work in this case, and they have related redox potential to the potential energy with some relationship. So the decrease in redox potential or potential energy is equal to EH divided by 0.0591, has positive and negative effect on rice growth. So when your submergence happens, redox potential decreases. So it will have some positive as well as negative effects on rice growth. So positive effects are increase in supply of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, iron, manganese, molybdenum, and silicon compared to aerobic soils. Disadvantage include nitrogen losses by denitrification, decreased availability of sulfur, copper, and zinc. You should remember this. Decrease in availability of sulfur, copper, and zinc, and production of some poisonous substances. Poonam Peruma, 1978, suggested that the optimum level of reduction may be in the range of EH 10 to 120 millivolt. So overall, at redox potential 10 to 120 millivolt, you will have the best of the things. Overall, the best thing in the submerged soils are there at 10 to 120, where you will get maximum availability of the nutrients and less losses of nutrients and better growth of the crop. Or PE is equal to 0.2 to 2 at a soil solution pH of 7. So this is the optimum EH for rice. Now, what are the chemical reactions or changes in soil under submergence? So changes are pH increases in acid soils and decreases in sodic soil. So you must remember all these points. These are important. pH increases in acid soil and decreases in sodic soil. We will discuss reasons shortly. Then reduction or decrease in redox potential. So we continue with the topic, and we were discussing about the chemical reactions or chemical changes in soil under submergence. So these are the major consequences. These are the results of results of submergence. So pH increases in acid soils and decreases in sodic soils. So pH comes towards neutrality. Reduction in redox potential. If you remember, I have shown you some data in tables that it started from plus 600, plus 700, and it has gone down up to minus 300. So overall, it is reducing from as you move from oxidation to reduced layer, oxidized to reduced layer, and with time also, reduction potential or redox potential decrease. Reduction of nitrate to N2O or nitrogen, N2. Denitrification happens. These oxidized compounds are reduced, whether it is nitrate or sulfate. So reduction of sulfate to sulfide, resulting in sulfide toxicity, which is known as Akiochi in Japan. So this disease is reported from highly reduced soils in Japan. Reduction of Mn4 to Mn2 and Fe3 to Fe2. Manganic become manganese and ferric become ferrous, resulting in manganese and ferrous or iron toxicity in rice. So this iron toxicity is quite common in rice, and initially means due to submergence. There is increased availability of ferrous iron, increased availability of ferrous iron, which causes toxicity. We will discuss in brief iron toxicity subsequently. And increase in supply and availability of nitrogen. You will see how this availability of nitrogen increases phosphorus, silicon, molybdenum, but decrease in concentration of water soluble. Water soluble here means available. Available zinc and copper levels decrease. Generation of carbon dioxide, methane, and toxic reduction products like your alcohols, certain aldehydes, and certain other organic acids and hydrogen sulfide, etc. are produced. Certain toxic compounds or undesirable compounds are also produced due to incomplete or due to fermentation. So these are the major changes you need to remember. And now chemical compounds
Hello,
in
sir.
soil. Just now you have seen reduction of sulfur,
Sir.
reduction. Yeah. Yes, please.
Sir, I am also present, sir. In West Bengal is in my place is Western disturbance is going here, so network issue. That's why I cannot respond your
What is your
attendance
name?
time, sir.
What
Sir
is your
Shogoto, sir.
Huh?
Sir Shogoto. Sir Shogoto.
Sugoto, okay, so ठीक है. Okay. So just now you have seen that several oxidized compounds or your metals or your elements have reduced. So they are reduced in a predictable or chronological order. After the first compound is nearly reduced, the compound requiring the next lower energy for reduction is reduced. So you can see this sequence. So you got oxidized chemical reduction sequence following submergence. So you on y-axis, you can see it is denoted by oxidized. Oxidized means higher redox potential, slightly reduced, moderately reduced, and strongly reduced. On y-axis, you have reaction sequence following submergence, after the submergence. So you can see oxygen in the oxidized zones is the first casualty. It can easily converted to water. It can easily be reduced to water. The next come under slightly reduced conditions, nitrate to N2O. Then MnO2 to Mn2 plus, means Mn4 to Mn2. Fe3, then Fe2. SO4, then H2S. So there is reduction of all these. And in the end, you see in the strongly reduced condition, carbon dioxide can be converted to methane. So this is one after another. It means CO2 conversion to methane require very high levels of energy, and conversion of O2 to H2O requires the least levels of energy. So this sequence is important. You can remember this. And you can see on the bottom on x-axis, very interesting fact. So these changes are happening due to submergence. If you drain out water, so reaction sequence will be same. Now you can start from the right side. The first one, your CO2, your methane will be converted to CO2. Methane will be oxidized to CO2. H2S or sulfur will be oxidized to sulfate, and Fe2 will be oxidized to Fe3. So when you drain out water, oxygen will enter, and these reactions can be reversed. So now you can see form of compounds in aerated versus submerged soils. Element aerated soil oxidized and reduced soil. So 3 columns. Number 1 is oxygen. In aerated soils, in oxidized soils, it is present as oxygen gas. But if it is submerged, then it is present as water, H2O. Nitrogen, nitrate, and N2. Manganese, Mn4, Mn2. Iron, Fe3, Fe2. Sulfur, sulfate, and sulfide, H2S. And carbon as carbon dioxide and as methane. Now you can see same thing here. This in the oxidized layers or in the areas where oxygen is present, suppose in the root part, rhizosphere, oxygen is present, then this H2S can be converted to sulfate, methane can be oxidized to CO2, ammonium can be oxidized to nitrate, and Fe2 to Fe3. And under reduction condition, it will be other way around, nitrate to NH4, Fe3 to 2, and CO2 to methane. It's just repetition of what you have seen in the last slide. Now you see microbiology, kind of microbiology, succession of electron acceptor uses in flooded soils. So this is one after another. You can remember the sequence: oxygen, nitrate, manganese, iron, sulfur, and carbon. So under aerobic respiration, oxygen is converted to water in the presence of electron and hydrogen by facultative anaerobes and aerobes. Then denitrification, 2NO3 converted to N2, and by denitrifiers, bacteria. Manganese reduction, MnO2 is reduced to Mn2, and manganese reducing bacteria. Iron to Fe2 by iron reducing bacteria. There are specific bacteria for reduction of iron. Sulfur, sulfate reducing bacteria. Sulfate, these are the reactions. You can see how these reactions are happening under reduced conditions. And then methane production, carbon dioxide, 8H, 8 electron, methane plus 2S2O by methanogens. Methanogens are the bacteria. So succession of electron acceptor uses in flooded soils. As oxygen declines, microorganism involved in this, as oxygen declines, anaerobic organism proliferate using alternative electron acceptors. So means your under reduced condition, anaerobic organism increase in number, the order in which available electron acceptors are consumed can generally be predicted. Order just you have seen. Change in redox condition of flooded soil over time reflect the successive availability of terminal electron acceptors. Now you can see the microorganism involved. In aerobic respiration, aerobes and facultative anaerobes such as Staphylococcus, Nocardia, Pseudomonas. For denitrification, facultative anaerobes such as Agrobacterium, Alkaligenes, Bacillus, Paracoccus, Micrococcus. For manganese reduction, Bacillus geobacter is important, geobacter, Pseudomonas, Shevanella. Iron reduction, Desulfovibrio, Pseudomonas, Geothrix, etc., and Thiobacillus. Sulfate reduction, generally obligate anaerobes, Desulfobacter, Desulfococcus, and Desulfosarcina, and so on. Methanogenesis, methogens such as Methanobacterium and Archaea. So these are the group of microbes. These are general groups or general level. You can find some specific species also. Now, we have seen some kind of changes in biology of the soil, some chemical changes like changes in redox potential, changes in pH, and we will also discuss subsequently how this pH changes in the soil, iron toxicity. We'll see them further, but before that, have a look at physical changes, certain physical changes. So change in color of soil due to flooding is an important physical property. So let us see how it happens. A change in chemistry result in a change in soil color. So bright color indicate a well-drained soil. You can see on the right side, this is bright color. That means it is aerobic soil. It is not a submerged soil. But submerged soils change it to a gray or blue-green color, often referred to a gley horizon, Gley. Gley horizon means in submerged soil, when the color of the horizon changes, the whole horizon or whole oxidized area where color has been changed, that is known as gley horizon. So submerged soil change to a gray, Gray, gray or blue-green color, often referred as a gley horizon. So why this happen? Why there is change in color from bright red or bright yellow to gray color or blue-green color? Because of reddish, yellowish brown colors are an indication of iron oxides in a well-drained environment. Submergence causes iron to be reduced, resulting in a different iron form and the gley color. So this color is because of reduction of iron, mainly due to reduction of iron, sulfur, and some other compounds. You can see this one more example from Sanchez. Reductive transformation of iron. Soil colors change from the oxidized state to the reduced state right by flooding. So you can see this color because soils are generally rich in iron. By weight, 5 to 6% by weight soils have iron. You should know this fact. 5 to 6% by weight soil is iron. So we have very large stores of iron in soil. And Pearsall and Mortimer, they said that surface layer of marsh soils contain oxidized form of iron, inorganic nitrogen, and sulfur, whereas the underlying layer contain reduced form of these elements, means reduced form of iron, inorganic nitrogen, simply nitrogen, and sulfur. These are responsible for change in color. However, the thickness of the oxidized surface layer is determined by the supply of oxygen at the soil surface and the consumption rate of oxygen in the soil. The two layers of soil can be characterized by the differences in oxidation reduction or redox potential. So redox potential of oxidized layer is much higher than the soil area or layers which are reduced. The various inorganic and organic redox system in the soil contribute to this potential, and the apparent thickness of the oxidized layer differs according to distribution of various components of the profile. I told you that this nitrogen, sulfur, or iron, they are responsible, their reduced form are responsible for change in color. But the size, the thickness of oxidized layer or layer where color has been changed will depend upon the proportion of these elements. You can see in the next slide, sulfur indicating the thickest oxidized zone. Means if you have higher levels of sulfur, so it indicates the thickest oxidized zone. Manganese indicating the thinnest oxidized zone. Means if you have more accumulation of manganese, you will have thinnest oxidized zone. The contribution of manganese is lowest and sulfur is highest. And iron showing intermediate thickness. The thickness of the oxidized layer increases with duration of the flooding or with time. Means if a soil is flooded for 10 years, 20 years, it can be 5 centimeter, 10 centimeter thickness. However, in recently flooded soil, it can be few millimeters, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, 5 millimeter, like that. So now we try to discuss the reason, because soil pH is also electro. Yeah.
Sir, why thickness increases with the time of flooding, sir?
Why thickness increases with the time of flooding? So
Flooding, yes.
yeah, you're very good question. With the passage of time, your depth of oxygenation, oxidized layer will increase, because slowly whatever water comes to oxygen comes to oxidized layer, it will go on increasing with time, month after month, year after year. So therefore, and due to entry of oxygen, continuous entry of oxygen with time, it will make changes in the oxidized layer. Is it clear?
Okay, sir.
Not clear. So it increases.
Okay, sir.
It increases with time. Or you can say this material, the more and more reduction will happen. It can be said other way around also. More and more reduction will happen with time. If this year, suppose this year, some sulfate is converted to sulfide, or some ferric is converted to ferrous. The color change will be there when ferric is converted to ferrous, or oxidized sulfur sulfate or sulfur is converted to reduced sulfur. So every time, with time, the reduction level, the quantity of reduced material will increase. As the quantity of reduced material will increase with time, then the thickness will also increase. I think this is the correct answer. Soil pH is, now we go to next, as I told you before, that pH of the soil comes to the neutrality. Whether it is acidic soil or low pH or high pH, it will come somewhere around 6 to 7.5 or between 6 to 8. So soil pH is a measurement of hydrogen ions in the soil and indicate whether soil is acidic or basic or alkaline. So counterpart of acidic is alkaline. Many times students do mistake. Counterpart of acidic, they say, it can be basic also, but they say alkali. So alkali should not be said, alkaline. The opposite of acidic is your alkaline or basic. It is not alkali. So submergence causes a shift towards a more neutral soil pH. This submergence. How it causes, we will see it. So this is the result of the change in chemical compounds when soil is reduced. Certain changes occur. You just have seen that certain materials are reduced. The graph on the next slide illustrates the typical change in pH after submergence. So you can see this is very interesting picture. You can see on x-axis you have weeks after submergence. This is time after submergence, when your soil is fully covered with water. On y-axis you have pH, a neutral pH 7, and acidic pH less than 7, and basic pH 7. So suppose your soil with basic pH, soil was having more than 7 pH, maybe it was 9 or 10 or 9.5, whatever it was. So you can see red line. It is coming down. So it is coming down, it is decreasing, and see by second week or by 15th day, it has come down most. And then the line straightens. Then you find a straight line after second week of submergence. So that means it has been neutralized. It has come somewhere to 6.5 or 6. And see the pink color line. In pink color line after submergence, then it starts increasing. Here the pH is increasing from lower side, maybe 3 or 4. So it will come nearly to say 6 or 6.5 or something around 7. So here going up, pH of acidic soil is going up, and pH of basic soil is coming down. They will never match. They will never match, but they have come towards neutrality. They are not exactly neutral. This pH can be from 6.5 to 7.5, or it can be from 6 to 8. But wherever you generally treat neutral pH, so neutral pH may be 6.5 to 7.5. So in that range, your pH will come. And you can see the soil with neutral pH. Soil with neutral pH, in the first week, there is very slight decline in the pH, very slight decline. And then there is increase, and then it stabilizes. So in neutral soil pH, there is little fluctuation in the beginning, but however, it maintains the same pH. So these are the changes with time. And if your submergence continues after second week, you will get there will not be any change in the pH. There will not be any change in the. So quickly you can see reasons for change of pH in submerged soil. So what are the changes? So you can see sodium carbonate, it is giving you carbon dioxide in alkali soil or alkaline soil. Calcium carbonate will give you carbon dioxide. And also carbon dioxide will come from decomposition of organic matter. So pH of basic soils is lowered, it goes down, it declines due to production of carbon dioxide from inorganic or organic sources. First you concentrate on this alkaline pH. So first two reactions, sodium carbonate and calcium carbonate, they decrease the pH of alkaline soils. In alkaline or sodic or calcareous soil, organic matter also gives you carbon dioxide, which magnifies the decrease in pH. A third reaction is related to increase of pH in acidic soil. This FeOH3 is converted to ferrous. So organic matter, third, oxidation reduction system regulates increase of pH in acid soil. We will see how this iron complex or iron hydroxide is helping in the increase in pH. So it will neutralize active acidity. Organic matter and active iron content determine the pH changes of acidic soils. So organic matter content normally increases activity of ferrous iron. So it is not good. If you have lower level of organic matter, then rise in pH is very fast in acidic soils. So acid soils low in organic matter or active iron or high in acid reserves, they may not attain a pH of 6. Now you can see the reason why there is decrease in pH of alkaline soil or calcareous soils. It is result of the accumulation of carbon dioxide in flooded soil. So this is the one-line answer, that it is the result of the accumulation of carbon dioxide in flooded soil, which neutralizes alkalinity. Moreover, carbon dioxide produced is retained in the flooded soil due to restricted diffusion. So whatever carbon dioxide is produced in the soil, it will not go out because of the water layer. It will not allow it easily to diffuse from the soil. So thus, lot of carbon dioxide is trapped in the soil and it makes carbonic acid. You can see this reaction, and this carbonic acid will give you hydrogen ions, and they will reduce the pH of the soil, production of hydrogen ion. Then you see for acidic soil, pH increases following submergence. After submergence, pH increases under anaerobic condition or reduced condition. Ferric iron is used as an electron acceptor for oxidization. So you can see this reaction, Fe2O3, this is ferric, and then you have organic matter. These are carbohydrates or organic matter, 4 hydrogen, and you get converted to the ferrous form. And this in these redox reactions, ferric iron from amorphous ferric hydroxide serves as an electron acceptor and organic matter as the electron donor. So this reaction results in the neutralization of acidity and increase in pH. So you can see more clearly Fe2O3 plus 6H plus 2 electron, and this hydrogen has gone to water, active hydrogen. Again, if it is manganese, then also this hydrogen is neutralized. So under acidic condition, hydrogen is neutralized by manganic oxide and ferric oxide. So that is the reason for increase in pH of acidic soil. So stabilization of soil, just a minute, we will discuss in the next lecture. Next link, just a minute, just because few seconds are left. The stabilization of soil pH at neutrality after submergence has several effects on rice growth. adverse effect of low or high pH is reduced. Excess aluminum and manganese in acid soils are rendered harmless. So that is the advantage, excess aluminum and manganese and even iron. If you raise the pH, iron toxicity will reduce. Availability of phosphorus, molybdenum, silicon increase. Mineralization of organic nitrogen is favored. Organic acids decompose. Lime is seldom necessary because you have raised the pH by submergence, and iron toxicity in acid soils is lessened. So we will discuss these slides again now in the next lecture when I start afresh. And now we break, and after the break, I will take up your questions first, and then we will discuss. So what time it is now? We can meet at 4. You can have a cup of tea if you like, and then we come back at 4. Is it okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, bye.
Okay, sir.